Executive sessions.
No, I didn't.
Good evening. It's 7:30 on the dot, and we're calling the regular meeting of the Village of Oak Lawn Board of Trustees to order. Clerk Quinlan, please take the roll.
Village President Barry,
Here.
Trustee Vorder,
Here.
Trustee Streit,
Yes.
Trustee Quinlan,
Here.
Trustee Olenichek,
Here.
Trustee Desmond,
Here.
and Trustee Carberry.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance. Okay, at this time, we'll open the floor to public comments. We do have a few on the schedule today. We're going to start with Bernadette Haas, who's going to talk about the Fall Fun Fest.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Bernadette. I'm the fundraising director for the Children's Museum in Oak Lawn, and we are here to talk about our Fall Fun Fest, which is coming up on Sunday, September 29th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And what we're requesting from the village is to close traffic access to Museum Drive. We're also asking for the Karis lot on the corner of 95th and Museum Drive and the first floor of the garage. And what we do is we have activities for families. We'll do 500 free pumpkins to the first 500 kids. Lots of fun things. So that's what we're requesting from the village today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a very good time also. Next, Mr. Ronald Kapp, various matters.
Good evening. How you all doing? First thing I'd like to do, just for the heck of it, I was going through the paper today, that Southtown Star preview, and they had a column in there about a young lady. They asked the young lady 5 questions. Fourth and fifth question were very interesting to me. The fourth question was, what do you like about living in the village of Oak Lawn? And she said there's a lot of stuff to do, and let me get my glasses on so I can read. Pardon me. I like that there's stuff I can walk to. There should be more food places here that I like. Something like Jamba Juice. Let's say revenue producing things instead of hospitals and doctor offices and all these banks. The fifth question was, what's the first thing you'd do if you were mayor? I'd make sure that one person in charge, that just the mayor, no trustees. They all bickered too much, and I'd stop spending so much money on stuff. Young lady's name is Tori McTeague, and this is a column by Steve Metschik or something. I'm not sorry about if I mispronounced his name. Okay, now I have a question for all you board members and the president who were recently elected or re-elected. How many of you received 100% of the vote? I don't see any hands, so that means that somebody didn't vote for you. So I guess there's a lower percentage, maybe 40%, 30%, whatever. But it's just a reminder that these people didn't vote for you, and when you don't do things that they like, they will talk to their neighbors who maybe voted for you or whatever, and come next election, you know, you may not be back in your seats. The other thing I wish to say is that, and this is more or less directed at the village attorney, read Article 6 of the Constitution and read it thoroughly, and you'll find out that nothing overrules the Constitution of the United States. I don't know if you learned that in school or not, but if you didn't, I'd go back and demand some of my money back. That's about it, and I hope you all have a nice time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Andy Scundriano's talking about advocate business development.
How do I follow that, huh? Hey, Ron, you know, it actually works. It happened in April. You talk to your neighbors, enough change does happen, so. Yeah, it does, yeah. It works. I wanted to talk first about the news about Advocate and fees that the village is going to receive, hopefully, about $3.2 million. And I want to give thanks to previous board members, Tom Phelan and especially Tom Duhigg of District 4, where Advocate is, for their hard work and holding Advocate's feet to the fire, along with Wayne Gray and Steve Radis of the PD&C and the current board, except for a couple, who stayed the course and demanded these fees from Advocate, which is, I think, has been using the village a lot longer than we've been using them. And the previous administration did not want fees and playing games and stuff, and we finally got it done, and I think that's well-needed money for the village. And I just wanted to thank the people that deserve it and that aren't here anymore, but they did work hard. I think this is a good thing for Oak Lawn, and hard work does pay off because this has been a long process. And second of all, I see on the agenda, I won't mention names because I know not to mention employee names. I do like this possible elimination of the Department of Business Operations. The director has been a political appointee for probably 11 years before the current person and the person before that. And I never liked that position for $80,000, which was friends of the previous administration before '05. That person lost, moved out of town. Next guy comes in, friend of the ex-mayor, gets the job. Never liked it before. I know current members, some did, some didn't. And hopefully that'll be gone, because then we won't have these arguments about whose sign is up there. That's always been a political job. Whether I like the person or not, it has nothing to do with it. So hopefully that will be done, and then that'll end some bickering about who's in that job and who's qualified, because the last two people were not qualified for that job. We didn't need it. I'd rather see a public relations officer or something if we're going to spend some money, other than, you know, something that can be handled in-house and will save us money, because certainly I know there's some news about pension debt we have, as well as everybody in Illinois, and we got to look to save some money. So I just wanted to end on that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. John Volokaitis, did I say it right? Volokakis, I'm sorry. I show items 7, 8, and it looks like 9.
Okay, the items that I'm referring to on the agenda involves impervious ordinances. Impervious ordinances are there for a reason, and that's to be followed. Granting variances only adds to flooding. Contrary to what some P&D commissioners and some people on this board have questioned and have concerns with, flooding at the subject and adjacent properties is only a part of the intention of the impervious ordinance. Again, the excessive runoff flows into the storm sewer system, exceeds their design capacity, and overflows into the sanitary system. Without proper detention capabilities along the way, this all travels further downstream to areas with lower elevations and comes out and floods these areas. And again, we're not talking about the inconvenience of flooding basement recreation rooms and basement playrooms. We're talking about storm and sanitary sewer water flooding people's main living areas, and the areas where a lot of these homes are built slabs on grade. And this is flooding their kitchens, their bathrooms, bedrooms, and babies' nurseries. Since the P&D and the Board of Trustees haven't in the past had the wisdom or foresight to address these potential problems during development, please use the opportunity to stop further burdening people with other people's waste. The latest variance request is so that an owner can build a great room for entertaining and to have more room to play bunco. I've invited them to entertain themselves the next time we have a heavy rain by coming by and helping bail out, mop up, disinfect, and rebuild homes that they've helped flood. Recently, a variance was given to a gentleman so he can enlarge his garage and driveway to park his hot dog wagon. Another was given so a man with a bad back could put in a pool for exercise to use maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year. So these people get conveniences and rooms for entertaining while they contribute excess runoff to flood and become a burden to others. These variances may produce larger houses and increase property value, and therefore add additional property tax and village revenues. But that is also greatly offset by the lost values caused by flooding and increasing number of homes. This problem isn't going to go away on its own or too soon. You have got to stop these excesses and also address real remedies that can be implemented sooner than later. The St. Casimir project that's proposed may have its merit, but it's going to take a long time before people get any relief. The Mariano's development even is going to add to the problem. The current elevation is going to be raised by 2 feet, and the water that sits there now is going to be diverted into culverts going northwest into Stony Creek until Phase 2 is built. East Stony Creek Basin residents will probably see even more flooding coupled with more rapid buildup. Please, as I've said before, use this opportunity to stop increasing flooding the people downstream. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Laurentine Grady, Dune. Talking about Promenade.
I live at the Cloisters, and when you tore down Kmart and all those lovely buildings over there, you started working at between 5:30 and 6:30, the people that were there. And I would call or email or whatever, whoever I was supposed to, and I would tell them, you know, you're not supposed to start till 7. And I live right out I'm right there right out the window from everything. And my concern is this was happening on a regular basis. And it got to a point that one trustee told me that wasn't happening. Well, you know what it was? It's out my window. So I'm hoping that you're going to be looking at this issue when you're building so that we're not up at 5:30 in the morning when we don't have to get up that early. Dusting was another problem. It didn't affect me, but it will affect the people with the oxygen. It only affected my car. I can go get it washed. But I'm on that side of the parking lot, and I park on that side on the fence side of the parking lot. So that's a major concern. But the time element's a major concern.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. We're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda. It says conflict of interest policy. It should say conflict of interest disclosure. I apologize for that typo. For the purpose of today's meeting, we're defining conflict of interest as any item on the agenda for which an elected official on this board or their family receive or has received a financial benefit. At this time, I'm asking the board if anyone has a conflict of interest to disclose to any item on tonight's agenda.
Mayor, now you said you're defining a conflict of interest. Now, based on what authority are you defining a conflict? And specifically, when you say I'm defining a conflict of interest as any board member or family member having received a benefit, it's actually rather, I would say, broad and undefined. So
Right.
I think it's great that you want to, you want conflicts disclosed. I think, that was something that you said from back when you were campaigning, that I would like, conflicts of interest disclosed. But since you've been here, I really haven't heard you or anybody that you ran with disclose any conflicts. So
Okay.
I'm not sure how you
Are you
define a
requesting
conflict.
to recuse yourself from declaring a conflict of interest for this meeting
I
until
don't have any conflicts that are deemed by state statute, I can tell you that for
Okay,
sure.
so as we define it here
You
this
don't-
evening?
I don't think you get to define it. You want to pass an ordinance, you can do that,
Okay. Well, it is referred to the committee. Unfortunately, due to a death in one of the trustees' families, we don't have that done yet.
Okay.
So I do feel it's important that this be done at every meeting. So if you
That's
don't
great.
care to
I don't have any
participate in it?
conflicts. I am participating. I don't have any
Okay.
conflicts.
So for the purpose of tonight's meeting, conflict of interest is defined as any item on the agenda, as I read. Are there any other comments, any conflicts of interest to declare? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on and proceed with the agenda. Tonight, we are excited to recognize not one, but 2 Eagle Scouts in Oak Lawn, J.P. Murphy and James Spoto? Spoto, okay. Would you like to join me at the podium and tell us a little bit about your projects? Okay, going first?
I guess I'll go first.
Okay, so introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about your project.
All right. Hey everyone, I'm Jim Spoto. I'm a Boy Scout in Troop 619. And my Eagle project was basically, I was collecting eyeglasses for the Evergreen Lions Club. And I'm proud to say that they told me in a given year, they're lucky to get around 1,000 eyeglasses. And I was fortunate enough to get them around 720, something like that. I made up a huge amount of what they would normally get in a year. So I'm very pleased about the results. And actually a huge chunk of the eyeglasses that I got came from St. Gerald School and the parish. So I just send out a huge thanks to them and massive appreciation. So thank you for having me. That's all I have to say.
The Village of Oak Lawn proudly recognizes and congratulates you on this wonderful achievement of Eagle.
Thank you.
So best of luck and thank you, and great idea to collect those glasses. Means so much to people.
That's the thing I can do to help.
Hi there, my name is JP Murphy. I am from Troop 618. My Eagle project was about raising awareness about the emerald ash borer. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a small little bug that goes into ash trees, and it basically eats away at the tree, so that way it kills it. So my project was basically going around and making sure that people were informed. So I was basically going to village events and explaining what the tree was, what the bug was, and any kind of treatments that you could use to basically kill the bug in the tree, or what you could do to cut down the tree. So, yeah.
We're just so proud of your accomplishment, and best of luck to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Item number 6 on the agenda is a request to approve the Children's Museum in Oak Lawn's Fall Fun Fest on Sunday, September 29th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. May I have a motion, please, on number 6?
So moved.
Properly moved by Trustee Olenichek.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Streit. Any discussion? Clerk Quinlan, please take the vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 7 is a request to approve the Planning and Development Commission referral for certain variances for the redevelopment of a C3 regional shopping district at 111th Street and Cicero Avenue, which was an 8-0 vote to approve petition number 2013-26 and petition number 2013-27, Stony Creek LLC petitioner in District 5. And item 8 is an ordinance granting that request for site plan approval. And may I have a motion, please, on item 7 and number 8.
Motion approved.
Properly moved by Trustee Quinlan,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Carberry. Any discussion?
Okay.
Okay, please take the roll.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Trustee Quinlan?
Yes.
Trustee Olenichek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
And Trustee Carberry?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And Larry, I understand, is Hamilton here, and would they like to say
They
anything?
certainly are, Mayor. I'd like to turn it over to Trustee Carberry for a brief introduction. Mike?
Sure. I've had an opportunity to meet Paul Sheridan, Hamilton, and Todd Burlinghoff, and I can tell you guys this: everybody's interested to hear what you have to say when we're going to get a shovel in the ground and when the stores are coming. So, please.
Right. Do you want? We had a couple pictures. Do we want to show those at all?
I think we should.
Can the screen be pulled
Yeah.
down, or is that
Yeah.
automatic?
It's automatic.
You got a button there. There we go.
It's a fancy joint.
See? You guys see? Make sure.
I think Jack's.
It's on. And the button.
Well, while he's figuring out, there we go. I'm Todd Burlinghoff, partner at Hamilton Partners, and while he's figuring out how this works, we're very excited to be here. We've been working very hard. I think it's been 4 years at least that we've been involved in this project, so it's been a long time. And we're now at a point where we are very close to putting that shovel in the ground. We obviously did the groundbreaking a few months ago, but the real shovel is going to, we hope, start in September. Everything is moving according to plan. Mariano's lease is signed. There's been rumors that they're pulling out of Oak Lawn. Those are absolutely false. They are moving as fast as they possibly can. We've got an engineer on staff, or not on staff, but that we've hired that's almost done with his plans. We've been working with Jack quite a bit, and those should be done in about 2 weeks and going in for permit to start site work. We have the architect on board who's been designing the building, and when we get this turned on, we'll show you a picture of it. And we're going to working drawings pretty quickly. As soon as the engineering is set, we have to wait to finish floor elevations, things like that we're working on. We've got the three retail buildings, and until leases are signed, we really don't want to talk about the tenants themselves, but there's been a lot of activity. And a lot of activity for the restaurant tenants that someone here asked about and looking for. We've got quite a few restaurant tenants, and some good restaurant tenants that I think you're going to be very proud of and very excited about. The landscape architect is working now on the plans, and we're starting to work on that that fountain feature on the corner that we're very excited about. That's sort of an example of what Hamilton Partners does throughout the area. So all I can say is we appreciate all the help that the village has given to us, the Planning Commission in their approval and the variances. They were minor variances really at the end of the day, and we're excited about that. And
well, if I could, Mayor, too, while we're talking about it, because a gentleman got up and expressed a concern, not only on some private lots, but also this development about stormwater management, and I've seen him attend Planning Commission meetings, and his comments have certainly not fallen on deaf ears. Those of you who are familiar with this site, this is basically a parking lot completely asphalted in the 1970s. No landscaping to speak of, and no permeable lot coverage. The plan that was reviewed and scrutinized at a public hearing by the Planning Commission and unanimously approved on an 8-0 vote includes landscaped islands where stormwater will make its way to that permeable surface. It includes setbacks like you do not have anywhere in the village of Oak Lawn. Setback is the green space between the curb and the actual development. And you will see setbacks on 111th and on Cicero that do not exist in the village of Oak Lawn, meaning they're wider, more green space. Additionally, there's an effort working with the Green Committee chaired by Trustee Olenichek to continue the wonderful Wolf Wildlife bicycle pedestrian path into the shopping center to integrate it into that development. And some of the tenants that the developer is working with, the design is to basically integrate that so someone walking from adjacent neighborhoods could make their way to Mariano's, could make their way to eateries and other stores, or if I was a bicyclist, eventually make a stop here on my journey to the Cal-Sag Trail, which gets under construction this fall, so that next summer Oak Lawn residents in 20 to 25 minutes on a bicycle can be along the Cal-Sag and can travel all the way from Alsip to Lamont. And if you're more ambitious, you can make your way further out to the west on the Centennial Trail. So those are all pretty visionary plans, and the whole concept from day one from the Board of Trustees was to integrate this shopping experience with Metra, with Village Green, with the wonderful Park District Wolf Wildlife and their pathway that goes through Richards, makes its way out near the golf course, and now hopefully to the south. So that's the plan, And, you know, you can Google Hamilton Partners, you can look at their various developments, and if anything, their engineering and their landscape architects are some of the best in the Chicago area. How we doing there, gang?
Yeah, it's too bad. Well, I apologize for that. We thought we had that covered, but I don't know if there's any other questions by
Give them a minute.
the trustees.
If after a minute or so, maybe if they can't get it
Sure.
going, maybe email the presentation and we'll get it to the press and they'll get it out there.
Absolutely.
Anything more you want to say before?
I don't know. I think you know, Larry did as good a job as I could have done with that
Yeah.
summary. So, you know, we're, like Todd said, we're very excited. We anticipate we'll break ground here in September. We'd like to do some mass grading before winter hits, get the pad for Mariano's constructed and ready. Winter will come in, spring comes, we go vertical, and anticipate delivery in October.
Great.
And at which point they'll take over and do their fit out. So
Can you tell me how this store will compare to other Marianos?
if you've been to, this is a big one, this is 72,000 square feet. If you've been to Vernon Hills or Frankfurt, you'll get a sense as to what they're trying to, I wish this thing would turn on. You could see-
I know.
You could see exactly what they're doing, but it's impressive. It's got a big glass rotunda as you come in off of Cicero. Nice work of brick and stone, and you know, it's impressive architecture, and we're going to try to mirror some of that in the balance of the development. So,
And Mariano's continues to do well as a company. I mean, it's owned by Roundy's. There's been a lot of press about Roundy's in terms of some of its issues when it went public, but their stock has stormed back.
I think of the 5 stores they've opened that have been open for a year, the average sales are $50 million per store.
Right.
So it's impressive.
When an average store for a Dominick's is about 12 million. So it gives you an idea of where they fall. And they've continued to keep that sales pace up, which I think is important.
I'd
Exciting.
encourage people to go onto the patch, and you can see some of the reviews with regard to the new Elmhurst Mariano's that has just opened, and they're just glowing. I mean, you can't find anyone who had a negative thing to say. So they've got it figured out.
If we could indulge you to just hang around for a few minutes. Our next item also requires the projector, so I'm just going to move down on the agenda because we really do need to get that projector going, but I don't want to have you here and trying to force conversation. So if you could just indulge us and relax a moment, and then we'll come back as soon as we get that projector.
Well, the one thing they did talk about is the tenant activity will greatly pick up upon development, right?
No question. And the tenant activity, like Todd had alluded to, it's pretty high right now. Unfortunately, and I wish we could say more, when you sign
right.
letters of intent, you're under confidentiality until such time that the leases are signed. And we
Right.
haven't signed the leases yet, so
Yeah.
you know, it's a little bit early yet on that, but there is very good activity.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Paul.
So I'll need a motion to,
Mayor, if I could, just one last item. I think it's very important for the audience, I know the board's aware of it, but an anchor store like Mariano's is anticipated to employ 350 to 400 individuals. The first phase of this development, estimated to be approximately 115,000 square feet, is estimated to generate well over 800 new jobs. So when we talk about not only their adherence to the land and the respect for the ambiance, the landscaping, and integrating it with the adjacent wolf wildlife, it's a development that Hamilton Partners is looking to be cognizant of the job creation, the tax base generation, both in terms of sales and also in terms of the revenue stream from your property tax in that area. But bank deposits that come from individuals that have jobs, and also Mr. Mariano's commitment. Any of his stores that we visited, Trustee Strite, Carroll, and others at the Frankfurt store, Arlington Heights, or Vernon Hills, he prides himself on trying to recruit folks from the area. They want, when you go into Mariano's, to be the face of Oak Lawn. When you go into Arlington Heights, they want it to be the face of Arlington Heights. So that's distinct. That's kind of like I remember as a child going to the local grocery with my parents, putting that face back into a store and making the shopping experience not drudgery, but part of your daily activities. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So if we're going to, Treasurer, are you okay postponing it till we get the projector up? Because I know you're pressed for time as well, so I apologize. So I would like a motion, please, to postpone item 9, which is our treasurer's pre-budget finance presentation up until the projector.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and properly moved by trustee Warder, seconded by trustee Quinlan. Any discussion? Please take the roll.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Trustee Quinlan?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
And Trustee Carberry?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item number 10 is the approval of meeting minutes from the regular meeting dated July 9th, 2013. May I have a motion, please, on item 10?
I make that motion, Mayor.
Properly moved by trustee Vorder,
Second.
seconded by trustee Quinlan. Any discussion? Please take the vote.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Trustee Quinlan?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
I'll abstain.
And Trustee Carberry?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0-1.
Thank you. Before we start our new business, I just want to say the exciting news. One of our public comments disclosed it. The Village of Oak Lawn and Advocate Christ Medical Center have reached a historic agreement in which $3.2 million will be paid to Oak Lawn through January of 2016. This represents years of negotiations spearheaded by former District 4 trustee Tom Duhigg. It's big, big news for Oak Lawn and the hospital, and I just wanted to start out the comments that way. In District 1, Tim Desmond.
Yeah, 3 items. I know we're stuck for time tonight. We got Fall in the Green coming up soon. I would like to ask anyone that would like to volunteer to contact us at the village, or if you want to be a sponsor, you can call us at the village, or you can contact me at 346-7001. Second item I have is the calls I'm getting from residents, and they have been mostly on 2 items. Unfortunately, they are complaining about rude behaviour at the village hall, which I haven't experienced it, but given the rude behaviour by some of our elected officials to each other, it's probably not surprising that employees feel they can also treat the residents the same way. And I think it's something we will discuss later in term limits. I would ask the experienced members of this board to think back when they were first elected. Think of the great things that they wanted to do, the enthusiasm that they felt, and the great things they have done. We, the new members of the board, also want to do great things for the people of Oak Lawn. We should be looking to you for leadership. You should be teaching us from your experiences. Instead, we're learning from your mistakes. I think the whole infrastructure in the village, we need to look at it. When the people come in to pay their bills or do business with the village of Oak Lawn, they should not have to conduct their business through bulletproof glass windows. It should be open, inviting. There should be a friendly atmosphere. The employees should wait on the residents. The residents should not be waiting on the employees. And the last item is I got a call from a lady today, and sometimes if we listen to the people, we can also get to solutions, and this lady had a great solution. She called to the village because she needed help with her getting rid of some of her electronic equipment. She had a couple of old TVs, a couple of computers that she wanted removed, but she could not. She was 73 years old. There was no way she could move them herself. So she suggested that maybe we have a pick-up date. Maybe at the beginning of summer we could use our summer help to go and set a date, have the residents call, say that they would like their old TVs picked up on the first Saturday in June. We can have our summer help go pick them up, and possibly once more at the end of summer. That was a very simple solution. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let's move on to District 2 with Trustee Olenichik.
Yeah, I'd like to start off, again, the Advocate 3.2 million, just to say that it was a long time coming is a short statement to a project that the village manager started over 3 years ago to look in how the hospital and the village could partner. I'm glad to say that the hospital is partnering with the village to pay their fair share, and that overwhelmingly came out in any discussion prior to the last election. But we need to learn something from the history that we went through in the past. It's important that we as elected officials understand that we're in very important positions, and it's not our agenda, it's the residents' agenda, and that came out overwhelmingly. I know the previous board majority disagreed and even voted down getting a fee from the hospital to help offset our cost. This is true, and it happened. The residents talked about what they felt the hospital should do. We all do benefit from the hospital. Nobody is anti-hospital. It is a great asset to the village of Oak Lawn, and we want to continue to be partners with it. But them not paying any type of taxes, real estate taxes, and them not paying any type of construction fees, obviously was not fair to the residents in the village. There was a ploy to try to say that the Beatty property development could be a part of partnership with the village. We've just recently found out that the Beatty property, in fact, is not going to be developed, and that the hospital is not interested in the development of Beatty property. I just want to commend the old board members that some of them aren't here, that stayed the race. We stayed the course. We listened to our constituents. We listened to the residents of the village of Oak Lawn. And I want to thank the new board members for working very hard. I think that the mayor and Trustee Vorderer did a phenomenal job with being able to sit down and continue on the negotiations that Trustee Duhigg put forth and the hard work that Trustee Phelan put forth. I think the one person that sits there and doesn't get a lot of credit for this is Larry Deachin, and quite honestly, if Larry Deachin did not find the information that he found out about another Advocate property in the Chicago vicinity, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation. So I am very, very excited that the hospital is partnering with the village on a $3.2 million plus to help offset the running of the village, and I just want to thank the residents for having faith in us to get that taken care of, and I want to thank the mayor and the trustees that stayed the course.
Thank you.
Chief Murray has asked me to let the residents know the Village of Oak Lawn, in conjunction with Oak Lawn Community High School and Advocate Christ Medical Center, are hosting a full-scale exercise to test response capabilities to a mass casualty and active shooter event. First responders from over 25 local police and fire departments, along with representatives from local hospitals, Cook County, state, and federal agencies will be participating in this drill. This exercise will test the capabilities of first responders to respond to the immediate and long-term implications of a mass casualty, active shooter event, and local hospitals' ability to surge and treat mass trauma victims. This exercise is part of our ongoing commitment to community preparedness and school safety. This will be one of the largest multi-agency events occurring in the state prior to the start of the new school season. Over 40 different agencies will be represented in the training. I just want to let you know that the drill is going to be from 08, that's 8 o'clock in the morning, till 1400, which is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, on August 25th. We will have Austin from 95th to 93rd will be closed down. You will see a lot of activity going back and forth with different first responders. But I know in this day and time, it's not something that you ever want to see, and nor do we ever want to see this, but I commend our first responders for putting together an action like this to really test to see how we could handle something if that happened. And God knows that we practice just to practice. We don't ever want this to happen, but I commend our police department, fire department, and first responders for moving forward with this. And then secondly, school is beginning. I know it's my wife's favorite time of the year for the boys to go off to school, and I know a lot of parents are looking forward to it. But when we're out there driving around the streets, please help our community, because number one call that I get as a trustee is about traffic, speed of traffic, flow of traffic. And when we have these kids out here, and just think about this, if you're in a 25-mile-an-hour speeding, the 25-mile-an-hour zone, and you're doing 35 miles an hour, that extra 10 miles an hour could mean the difference between life and death. So please, watch your speed through the school zones and through the regular zones on the major streets that we go through. Majority of the people that we get calls about are residents, neighbors, friends, and family. School's starting out. There's nothing that you have to be at that quickly that can't wait a little bit. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We're going to take a break. Trustee Straight, sorry, got to wait a little longer for your excellent report, and let's turn it back over to Hamilton Partners, please.
Well, now that we've got this up, you can get a sense as to what Mariano's is doing out there. And this is indicative of their current prototype. And beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? But we think it's a nice-looking building, and it's about, the rotunda goes up 31.5 feet in the air, if I'm remembering that correctly, and about 25 feet to the top of the other walls. And if I can get to the next slide, it gives you some of the other elevations. East, west, you can see they've even punched windows in on the east and west sides of the building. You get a sense as to their signage as well. This is the site plan, and probably in greater detail than anybody wants to see it. I guess as we're on it, one of the things that we will mention is you'll notice up in the, if I got a laser, this is detention up here, whereas the site doesn't have any on-site detention now. We're going to improve that situation. And here's, this is a sample landscape plan that we're working on right now. It doesn't call out species at this point. The landscape architect is at work on that. But I think what's important to us is to do something different in Oak Lawn. And as you drive around Oak Lawn, so much of the development goes to the curb. There's so little green space as you go down Cicero. And so we're setting back from Cicero 25 feet. We have one area here where it's a little bit shorter than that, but then we make it up here on this building. And then we do a big setback with the water feature. And, you know, as you're at the corner, the goal here was to have something that looks natural. And a great deal of work's going into that right now with our landscape architect designing something where people can sit out on the patios. You know, the goal being having restaurants here on the ends of these buildings. This may be a full-service sit-down restaurant in and of itself. And they'll put patios out onto the pond. And then, you know, Todd and I spend a lot of time talking about what we can do to improve the aesthetic as people are eating there, and also improve the visual for people that are at the intersection in their cars. And one of the thoughts is, you know, can you do fountains along the front here that pump up enough spray where you can create some white noise and protect the people on the patios from some of the traffic noise and give them a more, you know, bucolic environment in which to eat, and you know, create a pond that may have lily pads and some koi in it and that type of a feature. So we're excited. That's the fun stuff, right? Fountains and statues and the things that we can incorporate to beautify the corner.
I think it is important. We do spend a lot of time thinking about that, only because there are two customers, really. There's the drive-by customer who doesn't care whether there's koi in the pond or there's a lily pad. And so you have to create a feature and lighting and focus. So when they come by, it's nice. It provides some bucolic nature to this shopping center. And then there are the people that are actually sitting down and eating, or they're with the strollers with the babies. And I think you'll be impressed. I mean, I know it isn't something we just slap on there. I mean, it's slapped on there right now because we haven't figured it all out. But we've spent a lot of time already with fountain people, landscape people, to try to come up with different ways in which this thing will really set a tone for the village. And of course, this is your entrance from the south, through Alsip and then here. And we hope to you know, people who arrive at Oak Lawn, once they see this, make a huge impact there. You know, if we have a request, it's to help get IDOT to move their traffic light box that's sitting on the corner, because that's going to block a little bit of the visibility. But other than that, and you're doing a great effort to get the the lights, the electrical poles down and everything else. We really want to clean that corner up so that this visual is as clean as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, that was worth the wait. Appreciate it, guys. Okay, item 9, going backwards on the agenda. Item 9 is a pre-budget finance presentation by our treasurer, Mr. Pat O'Donnell. Pat, as you may recall, was recently appointed to the position of village treasurer, and he's been very, very passionate about doing it well, about the numbers. In early discussions with him, it became clear that the board would be facing some really tough decisions as we prepare the budget over the next 90 days. I've asked him to prepare this presentation so that everyone's kind of on equal footing going forward and we know where we stand. So I'd appreciate people holding their questions until the end of the presentation whenever possible. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Pat O'Donnell, Treasurer of the Village of Oak Lawn.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I don't have the pointer, the clicky thing, so if you guys could push through on the presentation, that'd be great.
Also, if any of the press would like, or any of the residents, we have about 10 of the slides available if anyone would like some to make notes or look at. Please come up if you'd like any.
Budget conversations aren't as good as Mariano's. Click the next slide, would you? Oh, you got it. Great. Okay, so in conversations with Brian and Larry and Joanne, you know, we try to set goals on what we're trying to accomplish in terms of the budgeting for this year. And one of the things we wanted to do is move to multi-year budgeting, trying to look a little bit forward instead of just looking 1 year out in advance. Also trying to make the budgets a little bit more transparent and understandable to the average resident. You guys will be the judge if we've been successful at that, probably not, but we'll keep working at it. And also keep focused on the big issues and not get lost in the details. Whenever you have budget and number discussions, they tend to get a little bit dry. So hopefully I'm going to try to focus just on the big things. And this is really just an introduction to the budget. The budget really doesn't get into full swing until September through December of this year. So as far as, I thought I'd throw out some pitfalls. One of the things I will be talking about, all governments need to stop stop kicking the can with respect to the pension liabilities. So I'm going to go talk about that a little bit. Hopefully we're going to rise to the challenge. We need to stop using sort of overly rosy forecasts in our budgeting. And this last item, when you look at some of the numbers that I'm going to present, some of them aren't the best, but I will state that in terms of looking at the rest of the municipalities within our state, we're in at least the top 40% in a lot of these issues in terms of our unfunded pension debt and our overall debt. So with that said, I'll click into, that's going to be real hard for anybody to read. So do you got more of those copies? If not, I'll hit the general numbers, and I'll just highlight a couple things. One is what we tried to do is if you look across the top, it goes from 2013 through the projected 2018. What's that? Oh, no, I was just doing this for anybody else because it's going to be so hard to read. Anybody else want one?
Anybody else?
So anyways, the first column is you can see it's the approved 2013 budget. This is folks who were around last year for the budget should sort of understand these numbers. The top part is our revenues, you know, our sales tax, our income tax, our property tax, other taxes. Then our expenditures. And if you notice that basically our total revenues and our total expenditures for 2013 sort of match. The one problem with that is that sort of down at the bottom, we didn't deal with the pension. We didn't fund it to where we need to fund it, and furthermore, we didn't fund some of our retirees' medical to the level it needs to be funded. So if you kind of like add in those numbers, we're not so good in terms of being balanced, and we actually have a negative 4.7 million-ish deficit for this 13. Second thing I'd point out is that if you look across the bottom, it's really hard to read, and I apologize, but this will also be on the internet, is that the numbers go from sort of negative 4.7, and they get more negative as you go out in time. And the reason is because the expenditures are basically increasing faster than our revenues. Now, these numbers, there's a lot of things that this is a first pass at this process, and so there's things that you could point to, for example, like the income tax is relatively static after the first year. That probably isn't accurate. It probably is going to increase a little bit. Someone could definitely make the argument that the sales tax should be increasing at a faster level as well, and those are absolutely true. So this is more of a first pass, but I think the big takeaway of this is we're sort of, if you think of this as an income statement, we're negative for this year. We have to start, hopefully in the following slides, you'll all agree with me that we have to start being much more aggressive at dealing with our unfunded pension liabilities. And I think that me, Larry, Brian, and Joanne at least would all agree that that we do believe our expenditures are rising faster than our revenues. But needs a little bit more work before sort of the next time around. And before I forget, thank you to Joanne and Brian, who did the lion's share of this presentation, and over the last 5 or 6 weeks have educated me a ton in terms of government finance. So thank you very much. So next slide. This slide is the pension contributions over time. So this is going back in history. This is from 2004 to 2013. And you're going to see this 90% of recommended number. I'm going to use this a bunch. There's been a new law that I'm going to talk about that's been passed in 2010 that's going to change a bunch of things and why we're going to have to deal with this a little bit more aggressively. I'll get to and discuss it more. But what this 90% number is basically there's a number that the actuarials, they look at, how long people will live. They look at the rate of returns, and they come up with numbers that you have to sit there and what you're supposed to be putting in, and there's this 90% of the recommended number, which we are going to have to hit in the future. So for this, the top one is these are down the left-hand side are the three areas of the government, the police, the fire, and the IMRF, the biggest areas. And then you can see I've kind of like bucketed these into three different groups. The first group is from 2004 to 2006. We were basically funding things close. You can see for the police, I can't read it, 1.38, I think 1.36. These are all in millions and thousands of dollars. So that's $1,380,000 and $1,360,000 for the fire. And you can see that in terms of where we were funding them, we were within a couple $100,000, $200,000 or $300,000 for the first sort of that 2004 to 2006 time period. 2007 to 2009, something changed. If you can see it, the recommended number jumps from 1.38 to 2.26 and 1.36 to 2. My eyes aren't that good. 2.79, I think. So they're almost doubling. And that one is due because what happened is one of the assumptions changed. They changed the rate of return assumption from 8.5% to 7%, and that means since our assets weren't going to get as much of a return, that we had to put in more money. And you can also see what happened in terms of our unfunded bit from 2007 through 2009. It got up to the $1 to $2 million level. Third bit is also changed at the end of 2009. They made another change, and unfortunately our pension, we were using old actuarial tables. So we were using 1970 actuarial tables. And what that meant was that once you change those actuarial tables, people are living a lot longer than they were in 1970. And so sort of 40 years later, people live, I think the number was 3.9 years longer. So because of the 3.9 years longer, the number again jumps up from 2.3 to 3.3 and 2.4 to 3.3 again in terms of the police and fire. And you can see what's also happened over the last 4 years in terms of the funding. The funding went to -$4 and $5 million per year. Do I got any points on that? Nope, that's good. So in case anybody wonders, what would happen is if we keep on funding like we have over the last couple of years, we stay at sort of the $1.2 million level, which is what we've now put it into the tax. Everybody's, if you notice on your tax returns or your tax statements, there's a breakout for police and fire pension. That number corresponds. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Uh-oh. Yeah.
That's it. Go.
Okay. Thanks a lot. This is what happens basically over if we stay at that $1.2 million level, which is what we've basically been funding last year and this year. And if you do it over time, what happens is that our unfunded liability goes from 42 to 64 million for Papillon's Police, and from, I can't read that, 41 to 62 again million for fire. And furthermore, what happens is if you look at this 90% contribution level, because the Illinois passed this law that requires us to be 90% compliant by 2040, the amount that we're going to have to give per year goes up as well. So if by the chance we got to 2018 and we just did fund it at 1.2 million, this predicts, and there's a lot of assumptions in the prediction, it assumes that we get 7%, it assumes people are going to retire when the actuarials say they're going to retire, it assumes that people will live as long as the actuarial tables say they are. But if those assumptions are correct, then we will have to, I don't like this thing, sorry about that, then we will have to give $5.148 million. This is just in the case for police, another $5 million for fire from that point, 2018, through 2040 to catch up. And I'll talk a little bit more about the law in following slides. As far as the present value of the unfunded, this is where we're at as of 12/31/12. Police we're 43 million of it's unfunded. This is the amount of assets in the pool, 70 million. For fire, 42 million is in the fund. I'm sorry, is unfunded. This is in the fund, the 70 million. And this is for IMRF personnel, 13 million is unfunded. This is what's in the fund. Anyways, you add up the total amount, which also includes the post-retirement health care. This is for folks that retire and then they're under the age of Medicare, so we then cover them. Then you add the total and we get to a nice number of 110 million, which is the size of our total unfunded liability. I also put at the bottom there the number of households we have in Oak Lawn, 16,600, and the cost per household, which is 6,646. And of course, we'd never sit there and there could never be a tax. We'd never want to get that money, 6,000 all in one shot. But what I want to caution folks is it is a big number, and if we try to even solve that number over time, what happens is you have to sit there and the number gets bigger. So if we want to solve it over 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, if we're solving it over 30 years, you got to sit there and it's like when we're talking about a $30,000 house hold debt. So anyways, it's big numbers. This is the law I was referring to. The law states, starting in 2016, that Illinois may divert state-collected local, basically it's sales tax, to make up the employer contributions that fall short of the full actual required contribution. And that's that 90% of the total actual liabilities number. And we got to get there by 2014. So. And what happens exactly is in 2016, let's say that we're supposed to be giving, I'm just going to use round numbers, we're supposed to be giving 5 million, but we only give 2 million. There's a 3 million shortfall. What the state will, what the pension fund will then do is they'll tell the state that they want to take in the first year, 2016, You'll take 1/3 of that amount, which is $1 million, and you'll put that into the pension fund. In 2017, it's 2/3 money, or $2 million. And 2018 and all thereafter, then you will take the total amount. For those who recall, the sales tax revenues we have are something like, what is it, 13 million there? Ish. So we're going to be forced to doing something whether we like it or not. One thing I'll throw out there is that me and Larry and Brian had a meeting with Moody's, a phone conversation with Moody's. They did downgrade us from A1 to A3 with a negative bias. Negative bias meaning they lean toward downgrading us next time. We are still investment grade, and there is no immediate financing. There's no bonds that we need to float or anything like that. So really there is no cost impact. But from a longer term perspective, obviously, it's not a good thing to get downgrades. And at some point, we're going to have to go back to the bond market. Anyway, the reasons: inability to increase the general fund balance and liquidity without one-time revenue sources, underfunding of our pension contributions, and the third one, which I don't think either Larry, we're both scratching our heads a little bit, continued property tax base contraction with lower EAV. We're not sure what numbers they're looking at. Anyways, what to do to improve the rating: continue replenishment of the general fund reserves and liquidity, and full and consistent funding of the village's pension plans. I put down last Detroit Matters, and what I'm just thinking. A cautionary note is that Detroit was once a great city, and it somehow lost its way. It tried to raise taxes, and it lost. We went from 1.7 million to 680,000 people. I think now we're at a point where it's just gone into bankruptcy, and the pensioners and the bondholders are going at each other. One of them are going to lose, and either way it goes, it's going to make a difference. If the pensioners lose, I think that won't be right, and if the bondholders lose, the pricing of governments actually raising debt will increase. So something will change off of that one way or another, in my view. So I put conclusions, but this should be recommendations. Obviously, I don't vote on anything, and so these are just my recommendations to you guys. I tried to be a little bit aggressive and use my past experience of business and try to think of what I would do if I was in the situation you guys were in. First, I kind of guess I wanted board approval for 2014's budget to include 90% of the actual recommended pension payment. That means that we're going to have to find $5 million, approximately, $5 million from somewhere. Let me go through all these, and then are they going to open it for discussion, or what do you want me to do?
Just go through them, and then I'll make a few comments, then we'll open it for discussion.
Okay. So I would also do immediate freeze of hiring for all the positions. I'd do a 90-day spending freeze on all new projects. And this 90-day freeze on any new loans, 90-day freeze for all non-union employees. Basically, when I was in business, whenever something like this would happen every once in a while, I was in finance, I was working for an investment bank, and if the market's always all of a sudden corrected and you had to sit there and potentially cut money, the first thing I wanted to do was not be hiring new people or not be starting new projects or not be getting further in debt. I would try to stop those things. Of course, you guys should, my 2 cents is, of course, you're going to finish the roads you've started, and of course, you got to do things that will end up costing more money. But I guess I would just set a little bit of a cautionary note that you guys should start setting the hurdle rate higher for approving projects. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Pat, there's huge amounts of data. I don't think anyone knows quite how hard these folks have worked on it. You camped out pretty much at Village Hall for at least a week I know of, and our staff have worked so hard. So I just want to thank you, thank Joanne and Brian and everyone else for doing such a good job. The long-term projections involve multiple independent calculations and actuarial data, and to see it so cleanly and accurately, it's a great gift you actually gave us, because when you start looking at it, it's hard to get a handle on it, and it's hard to see it for what it is, and you've done that for us, and I thank you for that. I want to tell the residents of Oak Lawn that although this is a sombering message tonight, I and several trustees on this board are committed to finding a way through this without raising property taxes. I think it's important to say that and really make every effort to do that. I would like to also call a special meeting with our legislators so they can understand the challenges we face in Oak Lawn. And Oak Lawn is not unique. This is happening in just about every municipality in Illinois, and many others outside Illinois, but especially in Illinois. But I know we can work together and make progress, and ultimately, remember, our goal is to preserve these benefits for future generations and current generations. So now I'd like to open the floor to any questions and further discussion.
Madam
Okay, Trustee Strike.
Pat, Vice Pat? Yep. Okay. First of all, you did point out that your revenues for that projection period were flat, which they were, basically. And your expenses obviously were increasing quite a bit. So, obviously that won't happen. I guess back in 2008, when the market collapsed, of course, revenues went backwards. We started losing, dropping in revenues. But I think we certainly have been seeing a rebound, and I guess, obviously we don't know what type of revenues that we will see over the next 5, 6, 7 years, but, and we do have a fair, I guess we have a fair idea of what the expenses will be. But the one thing that I guess I'd like to ask you is, since the biggest chunk of this will be pension liability, what effect would strong returns on the investments, the $70 million in the police and fire pension funds, have on that, let's say, the need to fund that those pensions with taxes?
We could do any slides you want in terms of, right now the calculation has the 7% as the returns. Obviously, if you got 10% for the next 30 years, that would solve a hell of a lot of problems. I don't, off the top of my head, know what that would mean in terms of our funding. Right now, it being at 61%, my gut says that unless you really think we're going back into, again, we can get 20 years of 9% returns, which is partly what caused the problem in the first place, was that number was, built into the calculation. For example, I think in the last 4 years, we have gotten better than 7%. But over 20 years, do you remember Brian's number? I think it was a little higher than that. But it was, I don't know. I think that, it would help, definitely. But in terms of the overall trend, just to put it in, maybe a sobering thought, because obviously that has a huge effect. But when Moody's looked at us, they did an evaluation, and they used 5.5%. And that's what they've done is, Moody's in the past has always let every sort of municipality put their own numbers in. And this year what they did is say that that's not right. We got some guys at 9%, we got some guys at 4%, so what we need to do is standardize it. And through their infinite wisdom, they decided to use 5.5%. And using 5.5% in an actuarial time frame of 20 years, as opposed to our 27 years, that changed our unfunded liability from $110 million to $147 million. And so that's one of the reasons for the downgrade. And they're looking at the ratio to unfunded liabilities to revenues, and that's going to be a key ratio for them going forward. So my guess, even if we thought we were going to get some great returns, is we'd still want to say, like I said, it doesn't make too much of a difference. You're going to sit there and you're going to be putting in that 90% of the recommended amount starting in 2018, and you're going to be putting in 2/3 of that amount in 2017 and 1/3 of that amount in 2016. And I don't know if you remember the one slide. One caution I'd have for you is, if you sit there and you wait and you don't want to sit there and you just keep on putting in the 1.2 like we did for the last 4 or 5 years, then this number that we have, this 90% projection, you can see it goes from, I can't read that, but 3.2 to 3.7 to 4, 4.3, 4.7, 5.1. So over a year, and remember, that's just police, and so then you got fire, so you got to double that number effectively. So every year you're staying at that sort of 1.2 level. You're increasing your sort of your what you're going to be paying till 2040 by, what is that, 300,000 times 2, 600,000. And again, we're not even talking about the medical liability, and we're not talking about IMRF.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Border?
Yeah, the 1.2 million that historically has been funding this pension, those dollars, that 1.2 million, as I understand it, come from the tax bill.
Yes, sir.
So the general revenues that come to this village over the past years, we're not tapping any of that to make up these pension obligations in the
Well,
past.
Joanne, you could help me out, but I think what happened was, if you look at this is the 2000, I think the first time we ever used the 1.2 million was in 2013. So that was the first time that it actually appeared on the tax bill, and they kind of went around. If you look at the previous years, what we gave is one, and this did come out of the general number. So that's one of the changes that was made in 2013, is to move to exactly what you just said, which is the 2.2 million coming out of it. Now, if we want to, and we want to sit there and move toward the, the let's call it the more correct, the 90% number, which is off the top of my head 3.4 or something like that. You got to triple that number, ish, 2.5 times, and then we got to, we should also put an IMRFs and the medical liability in that too, if that's what we wanted to do. Because right now it's just a bogey and it's not even keeping track with it. It's still causing us to actually go down as a percentage of assets.
Well, then I think you're telling me that in order to properly fund this, with the traditional way we've been funding it, is raising the people's property tax, the pension liability 3 times? Or are we going to tap general revenues?
You could. There's a number in there. There's a bogey in there for that sort of that 1.2 million. You could sit there and change it around such that that number got 3 times higher, and the property tax that was used for the rest of the general obligation was just that much lower, right? I mean, there's no.
It's a little confusing.
Right? Oh, good. She's taught me well.
Well, all I know is when I get my property tax bill, okay, there is a line item that says police and fire pension.
Yes, sir.
And that is added into the total amount of money I pay. I am assuming every one of those dollars are going to the pension fund.
I don't think you're correct in saying, and tell me if I'm wrong, Joanne, but I don't think you're correct in saying that it was an added number. In 2009, the last time that we had a major property tax, and again, you know more than me, but do you want to answer this question?
They changed it on the tax bills that they changed it on the tax bills where it now shows what amount is going to pensions for fire and police. A number of years ago, it all used to go into the general fund, and then it used to be then transferred over to the 2 pension funds. What they did, and I don't remember what year, they directly said, the state, that these have to be funded directly. So whatever you said within your tax levy every year that was going towards those 2 pensions would go directly from the state to those pension funds. It would not at all come into the general fund. So that's been going on for several years. Last year, I believe, was the first year that they decided to show on the tax bills exactly how much was going towards the pensions, instead of just being the one fee or the one line that says Village of Oak Lawn.
But what I'd say is that the number, the total property tax number, has been, including that what you're talking about, that's embedded in the total property tax number, has been relatively static for the last 3 years of 13. So it's kind of like they carved that out, and as opposed to taking it from the general, they just made it explicit and took that direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so in other words, you're just educating the taxpayer that this is the portion of the taxes we're paying the Village of Oak Lawn, okay? And that portion is for pension. And that's the only dollars the Village of Oak Lawn has contributed to the pension fund over the years. It hasn't taken any money from the general revenue, sales tax.
That's only existed 1 year. That's the only year.
Yeah, but they've been funding the pensions forever.
So they took it out of the general fund.
The same amount of money, the percentage-wise, but no additional money.
Correct, no additional money, whatever was set in the tax levy for the
There
pensions.
was no new thing, they just carved that out of the total number. There was not an increase for that, and to show that it was more of a transparency issue.
Okay.
Okay. Larry?
Mayor and Board, thank you, Pat. I think the recommendation that you made to call a meeting with our legislative delegation is so critical. The disconnect here that I don't believe taxpayers fully understand is you're looking at a municipal budget here where the village pays for the pension benefits, yet the pension benefits are determined and established by statute in Springfield. There is a disconnect. We read about it every day. Legislature's not even looking at this right now. They're looking at non-sworn positions, education, judges, administrative positions at the state level. They haven't even got around to public safety yet. But the message here is with that disconnect, you just can't pass or mandate laws in Springfield and walk away and not recognize there's a cost. In other states, what they've been doing with bills is you cannot introduce and consider a bill without having the estimate of what the cost is, both short-term and long-term. That hasn't been done in the past. So when Pat identifies those two blue lines, two changing events, first of all, locally assumptions were much more robust at 8.5% than what we are actually earning in interest because of the dip in the economy. And number two, people are living longer because of outstanding health care. That's a good thing, but it's also a cost associated with that. So later on in my presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we all have a responsibility to work together to solve this problem. If we're going to rely on it happening in Washington or Springfield, folks, it's not going to happen. So I applaud the mayor and the board and the new treasurer who have had adult talk here tonight. It's tough talk. It's real. There is not somebody out there who's going to write the check alone and solve this. It's going to take everybody in this room, including myself and some of my colleagues who are in this room. Some issues I'm going to talk about later on are going to be brutally honest as well, but they're in response to the analysis you see before. Trustee Strite is correct. This is going to be an iterative process. The budget's going to be looked at. The Board of Trustees will get it after administration presents it to them. They're going to look at it, and we're going to come up with some solutions. It won't be solved overnight, but if we kick it down the road, as Pat has suggested, we're nowhere. And we cannot do what's being done in Springfield. We're not going to do it here in Oak Lawn. Thank you.
Pat, I got it. Sorry.
Trustee Desmond?
You're saying right now we're paying 1.2 million into the fund.
Per 1.2 for fire, 1.2 for police, and where's the number at?
But you're saying, so
And 1.3 for
to
IMR.
fund it at 90%, you're saying that we need to increase it to approximately 5 million or by approximately 5 million?
By approximately.
So we're actually at like 6.2 million.
Pardon me?
We're actually going up to 6.2 million.
Right.
Approximately.
You're gonna, yeah, it's.
And for how many years will we need to do that?
It's 3.3 million for police, 3.1 million for fire. That's what, 6.4, and then you got another 1.3. There's 7.7, 7.8, and then that doesn't include the approximately 1.4 for the medical.
Trustee, what
yes.
you hear every day is that it costs taxpayers in Illinois $17 million in added costs if you don't address the problem. This chart that Pat's showing you is that it cascades. It continues to grow. It gets compounded, so it really gets away from you if you don't start looking at it.
I understand that. I'm just trying to get to the bottom line. It's a lot of data.
It's 5 million additional.
And over how many years?
20 to 2040.
Okay, thanks.
And how big is our budget?
50. This budget's 50 million bucks.
Yeah, so it's a lot of hurt. So it's tough, and if we do nothing, it just will snowball. You know, so we're all facing some tough choices, and the spirit of things, everything positive is happening, but this is kind of the big gorilla in the room. We just can't ignore it. So, any other comments, discussion? And again, I just want to say Oak Lawn is not unique with this problem. All throughout the state and nation, this is going on. So, Pat, I can't thank you enough, and thank you to the team.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you. Okay, so what we had done was kind of chop up the agenda a little. We had moved to new business by village trustees, and we already heard from District 1 and District 2, and we're going to move on to District 3 with Trustee Straight.
Thank you, Mayor. On May 14th, I had introduced a proposal that the vehicle sticker and senior refuse discounts be extended to persons with a disability. And I also recommended that the age for seniors to qualify for both discounts be consistent, qualifying at age 62. Since then, there has been staff discussion, but no formal action. The attorney has drawn up the ordinance, which I would like to see before this board at the next meeting. I have contacted all the school districts in the village of Oak Lawn to get an idea of the number of families that are affected by disabled children and adults. The information that we received show that there are a little more than 400 families affected from the 3 elementary school districts, the 2 high school districts, and Park Lawn. Some of these families may already be receiving the discounts, but if we for the moment went on the basis that none of them are currently eligible, this would mean approximately $10,000 in a reduction of revenue to the village, but we would be helping residents that truly need the help. As shown by the numbers, we're not talking about a large impact on our budget, although we saw the dramatic impact of the pension liability. But we also have at this point in, or at least at the end of the first half of the year, we were roughly running about $1.2 million ahead of budget, about $600,000 less on expenditures and running about $600,000 ahead on revenues. The disabled are now referred to as persons with a disability, which means that any person who is and who is expected to be indefinitely subject to any of the following types of disabilities: physically disabled, developmentally disabled, visually disabled, hearing disabled, and mentally disabled. This is consistent with the term as defined in the Illinois state statute. Also, persons with a disability that are receiving Social Security or SSI benefits are included. These reductions apply to homeowners with a disability or legal guardians of a person with a disability who reside in the residence with the applicant seeking the reduction. Proof of a disability must be presented by, as provided by Illinois law, with either a valid Illinois person with a disability identification card obtained through the Illinois Secretary of State, or a current Social Security or SSI verification, benefit verification letter, which contains the applicant's current residence, age, and disability. Residents who are already receiving a discount, and there's a couple hundred, 230 or so, through the village, will continue to do so, and there will be no need for recertification. Oak Lawn has always been a family-oriented village, a place where neighbors help each other. These discounts are a very small way to show that we still care and we want to help. I ask that this ordinance to provide discounts for persons with a disability be placed on the agenda at the next meeting to be voted on by this board. And I'd like to know if anyone has an objection to placing this ordinance on the next agenda. Okay, and then the next, or I guess I'd just like to comment on the comments, if I could. And I think, you know, we've had a lot of discussion about discourse, and we keep, we keep hearing about, you know, why is it that the board has these disagreements, and what's this all about? And I think, you know, I think we'd all love to get along really well. But as an example, tonight we have an announcement about this $3.2 million that we're going to receive from Christ Hospital. Now, the first I heard of it was when I the first I heard of it was when I I hate to admit this, but was what I read the paper this morning. So, but I did. That's the first I heard of it. So, and then tonight we have a resident, political gadfly, who gets up and explains what, you know, what a wonderful thing this is that the village has a historic agreement that we've reached. So it's very nice that a resident can explain it, and a newspaper has the story. They get to go ahead and write a story about it, but yet I know a couple of board members who didn't know anything about it. So, you know, so we wonder, why is it, and then people make speeches about it, about how, what a wonderful thing this was, the people that remained steadfast and fought so hard for this. But, you know, everybody knows there's two sides to a story, and you didn't hear the other side. I hope you'll hear it, and I'm sure you will. But I mean, just in a nutshell, I don't think there's anything wrong. Certainly, I'm not opposed to the village negotiating, whatever you want to call it, a service fee with the hospital. But the facts of the matter are, you know, there was, you know, first of all, there was another way to approach it. And that way, without, you know, reliving history, but that way was to enter into a partnership with the hospital and have them invest in our community, which would have provided untold millions of dollars in benefits, possibly on an annual basis. Now, what we did is we entered into an agreement that's going to provide about $1.1 million over the next 3 years. So do the math, it's under $400,000 a year. I know the manager was negotiating for over $800,000 or around $800,000 a year, so we got half or close to it, which you could say that's great, but there was another way to do it too. So, you know, when people want to know what's this all about? Why do we disagree? Could you experienced trustees, please show us leadership? Well, you know, I'm being lectured by board members who, you know, want to come here and make a political issue out of something that happened. And you know what? If you want to take credit for it, if you think you get to take credit for it, that's fine. But remember, you made the hospital, the largest organization, institution in our community, a negative issue in a campaign. Was that helpful to the village? I don't think so. So, you know, and I guess with that, I would just like to ask the mayor, you made the announcement here at the table, we have a historic agreement for $3.2 million with the hospital. Now, I know that the previous board voted to enact permit fees on the hospital development. What part of the $3.2 million were the permit fees enacted by the former board? Would you like to share that with us?
Certainly. The negotiations and trustee Border, you were there as well. The hospital came to us and said, you know, look, we want to pay our fair share. We know that this is what's right for Oak Lawn, but we want to know moving forward what the total nut, if you will, is. And nut is a bad word for it, but what's the expectation and how best to structure it? Okay, after much negotiation, the original permit amount was $2.033 million. Okay, and we wanted fees similar to Park Ridge, similar. So after much negotiation, we settled on $500,000 a year. However, from a bookkeeping stance, it made sense to have it be full permit fee the initial year. $167,000 payable January 15th next year, and then $500,000 each year after that through 2016, with the understanding moving forward that there would be continuing contributions.
Okay, and I guess first of all, I do think that having some kind of an agreement I think it's a wonderful thing that we have reached an agreement with them. But I also think it's important. You did start off by saying that the hospital said, we want to pay our fair share, which they always said. I mean, I've heard Ken Lukart, the CEO of Christ Hospital, say whatever costs that we cause for the Village of Oak Lawn, we will pay. We want to pay. And by the way, the other thing is that in this idea of a partnership, where they were going to develop underdeveloped or blighted properties in the village of Oak Lawn in partnership with the village of Oak Lawn, you know, it was an alternate approach. And quite frankly, the one thing that they did make clear, they weren't doing both, you know. So I think, you know, I mean, I think that actually, I think they got off easy with this agreement. But they did get this agreement, and you know, I think that's
Madam Mayor,
that's fine.
may I make a comment?
Certainly, Trustee Oliniechek.
Well, I just want to remind Trustee Strite that he was one of the people that voted against taking the fee from the hospital. He is quoted in a village board meeting saying, his words, not mine, "Advocate won't pay a fee, and it was wrong for the village to expect that. They already went over budget on their hospital project by $1.6 million, in which our planning and development did a great job by making sure that the extras were put in." Those are your exact words, and I had a feeling, Bob, that you would try to say
Honestly,
that this great thing,
can we call this to order?
that this great thing
Carol, you're
was
out
a
of order.
negative, and
This is,
I don't even.
This is Trustee Strite.
Carol, you need to recognize the chair.
Trustees, I am recognizing the chair.
Recognize the chair. You are out of order. Please be
I
silent.
am asking for, I'm calling
I
out
have
of
the floor. I've
order,
been
and I need to
recognized by
tell
the-
you why. This is.
And that your
Clerk
business
Quinlan,
partner,
Clerk
Dennis
Quinlan,
Brennan,
can you
was
please
involved
record
with
in the
the paving
minutes that
project.
Trustee Quinlan is not
Strite
recognizing the chair?
Report.
Yes, I will.
This is not
Thank
up
you.
for discussion.
Trustee
Can I have the
Oliniechek,
attorney?
please continue.
Can I have the attorney's opinion on this, please?
Trustee Quinlan, you are out of order.
Would you ask the attorney on
I would like,
trustee's report, is this up for discussion? Can this be a
When
discussion?
you're called out of order, you have to stop the debate.
I'm asking you a question. So you're allowing something that is not Robert's rules?
I was recognized by the president of the board.
Incorrectly.
I didn't know
You
that
have
you
a
were
brand new
president of the
mayor who
board.
doesn't
Trustee
quite know all
Quinlan?
of the rules.
Trustee Quinlan, if you do not recognize the chair, you
need to
are out of
recognize
order.
me as well. When a trustee calls
are out of
someone
order.
out of order, you need to
I
recognize them.
will just get down to the bottom line. I'm not shocked that certain trustees here would try to tarnish this great thing that has happened for this village in partnership with Advocate.
Tarnish. I'm just pointing out there were two
And I'm
approaches.
and I'm
Why is
pointing
that
out that
tarnish? That's
Trustee
just
Strite, please direct your comments through the chair.
I'm pointing out. I'm pointing out. I'm pointing out that.
You want to allow that.
I'm pointing out
Okay,
that
we're
the
going to
approach
shut it
of
down
Beatty-
and
I am
please,
pointing out that the approach of
I'm gonna
Beatty
call this to order,
was your
please.
approach
Point of
with your
order.
business partner, Dennis Brennan, making money from it.
Trustee Oliniechek,
That's
please
a fact.
recognize the chair.
But you admit
We
that
will
your
have more
business partner was
opportunities
involved
to
in it.
discuss this later. For now, Trustee Strite, please finish your report.
Actually, thank you, Mayor. That concludes my report.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, moving on. District 4.
Thank you, Mayor. The hospital is located in my district, okay, and it has been a very big issue to my district. And as the trustee in that district, I am very pleased with this settlement. Myself, the mayor, the village manager, Ken Lukart, and his assistant, Bob Harrison, sat for 6 hours on Monday, August 5th, to reach this agreement. It's an admirable agreement, which both parties walked out of that room with the understanding, okay, that we were going to work together into the far future. This was just the opening agreement. In fact, I think there was a comment made by Ken Lukart that we should have took the previous agreement from the previous board. It would have only cost us $1.7 million instead of $3.2 million. Those were his words. However, you know, Sandy, me and you worked on this, all this board worked on this, and past trustees have worked on this. And I need to give credit to the trustee from my district, Tom Duhigg, okay, who really led the charge on this, okay, before I ever became a trustee. In fact, after I won the election, he sat down with me and he educated me on all the history and all the players in this and who might be getting rich and who may not be getting rich and why they were motivated. Didn't appear to me that there were a lot of players here that were interested in working for the people of Oak Lawn. I sincerely believe this agreement, okay, is a good agreement. But I want to say, I really want to reach out and thank CEO Ken Lukart and his staff for their understanding and their cooperation in this whole process and in reaching this agreement. Certainly his leadership, not only in this matter, but in building that hospital into a world-class organization, needs to be recognized by this village. And I'm proud to be the person, okay, who represents that district. Ken Lukard called me up and he said, Terry, I found it an honor to work with you. You're a man of integrity. I want to meet with you every couple of months to discuss issues in the 4th District. I think this agreement is good for my district and it's good for the village of Oak Lawn. And again, none of this agreement that we have here today could have been accomplished without this elected board, previous board members coming together in the interest of the people of Oak Lawn. I thank this board for that. And Mayor, one more thing, if I can. It's not new business, but I just want to report, okay, that in the 4th District, we're aggressively paving 6 streets, 16 blocks, okay, of residential streets. Okay, there was some talk at one time I was only going to get 2 streets paved in my district. I got 6 streets paved and 12 blocks of streets being paved. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to District 5. Trustee Quinlan.
Yes, I have a couple items. First of all, I just want to let people know, you may see some trucks out and about tonight spraying for mosquitoes. They are doing it at the cemetery south of 111th Street as well as in Oak Lawn and surrounding Oak Lawn. It's that time of year. Second of all, I do want to thank Pat O'Donnell. I think he did a great job tonight explaining some hard facts to us. But, you know, something that Trustee Desmond had said is that it was a lot of information to kind of wrap your brain around. I've brought this up in the past, and we just really need to have these PowerPoint presentations or information prior to these meetings, because here we have Pat at our disposal to be able to ask questions. And when we're seeing something for the first time and actually, you know, having a hard time looking at the screen, it's just helpful for the board and I think for the residents as well, if we can ask questions that, you know, we anticipate other residents are asking about. You know, the other thing is, you know, there's a number of things on the agenda, on Larry's part of the agenda, again, with no backup information, and from the perspective of an experienced trustee, you need this information. You can't have people making decisions without that backup information. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure Mr. O'Donnell would be happy to answer any questions you have. If you have them afterwards, just send him a note. He's available.
I plan.
And thanks. And moving on, District 6, Trustee Carberry, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to Hamilton Partners coming out tonight for District 6 and 5. Residents I know, I'm sure, have been asking a lot of questions about that development, so it's good to hear that they'll be kicking it off this fall. And thanks to Pat as well. There's going to be a lot of, you know, a lot of tough discussions about this, these pensions, not just with police and fire, but throughout the state. But I think it's a start, just to discuss it and to get it out in front of all the residents was a good idea, and I thought Pat did a great job of that. Moving forward, it's going to have to be, we're going to have to work as a team. And when you talk about you know, we have a great police department, fantastic fire department, a great hospital. That's everyone has agreed to that. And to have those things, we're going to have to work together to keep it up. So you talk about talking to the legislator, we'll have to, in good faith as well as a board. When we talk, Larry, when we talk to the legislators, talk to them about, you know, we've made a real commitment to our departments, to our police and our fire and our residents. And maybe some of our neighboring communities aren't making the same commitment. So there might have to be some shared sacrifice from other communities, maybe to help to get our revenues, to increase our revenues for to give the same quality service that we get here. The other communities aren't giving the same, you know, right next door. So we've made the commitment, and we need to see what we can do to drive some revenue to help our people in public safety as well. And I think we could do that. That's something we should, when we're talking to our state legislators, that's something to discuss. how they can help us on that front. That's all I have, and again, thank you to Hamilton Partners coming out tonight.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item 12, which is the village manager's report. Let's see, item A is a resolution authorizing the village manager to retain Kathleen Field Orr and Associates as village TIF counsel. And item B is a, I'm sorry, item A, let's just, I'm sorry, can't read my own notes here. I'd like a motion, please, on item 12A.
Motion to approve?
Properly moved by trustee Olenichek.
I'll second it.
Seconded by trustee Vorder. Any discussion?
Yes, Mayor? Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I heard trustee Clement.
Trustee Straight?
Well, I guess I didn't see, there was no resume in my packet. There's no information on this attorney, and my question is, how can we vote on something if we don't know anything about it?
Manager?
Thank you, President and Board. I did provide a summary sheet, but I'll be more than happy to elaborate further on my recommendation. There are two goals when I make you a recommendation. One is to try to improve the services. Second is to do it more efficiently. In this particular case, I think we've been well served through the years with a core of legal advice, but I've made recommendations through the years for changes to improve that legal acumen and ability to serve this village. In this case, we're moving into a new phase. You just heard the Hamilton presentation. We're now going from a project that in the early stages was full of litigation and a lot of negotiations, real estate transactions, to now a development stage, securing tenants and building up not only employment but a revenue stream so that we can hopefully close off a lot of debt, something which you heard Pat refer to. Have an exit plan. Now, to do that, I felt it was time to make a change and bring in a firm that has expertise in the area of economic development and planning, particularly with TIF districts. I wanted someone that I could bring in at a lesser cost, and I wanted somebody that I could cap the fees, something that I recommended to you just weeks ago when we consolidated adjudication and prosecution and approved a contract with Kevin Cunningham. That's capped at $5,000 per month. You saw that in your disbursements, the first payment of $5,000 for the month. And all reports are that consolidation is working extremely well, that the men and women in our fine police department that issue tickets and have to attend the adjudication sessions before the judge and before the individual who is the recipient of the fine or the fee and should get fair and just treatment. I'm hearing that we've seen an improvement in that area. So the firm that I've suggested to you, Kathleen Field Orr and Associates, has approximately 35 years, the key principal, Kathleen, in municipal government, a lot of experience in the TIF area. One of her colleagues, specifically Matt Welch, is the individual that will be handling a lot of work for the village. I'm capping the dollar fee is going to be roughly, conservatively, 14 to 15% less than what we're paying today. Another very fine firm. I've spoken to that individual, just like I spoke to the predecessors before Mr. Cunningham was brought in, told him I was making the change, and I'm sure we'll continue to have a strong professional relationship with that individual in the years to come. So that's my recommendation. It is to save money, approximately 14 to 15%. Cap the fees at around $50,000 for TIF and economic development legal services. If we reach that level during a fiscal year because of some unusual case or a lawsuit, then I will come back to this board, as I'm required to do, to ask for additional spending authorization. That's all I have. Mayor, unless there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay.
I got a question.
I think Trustee Quinlan, you were at the same time earlier with Trustee Straight, so you have the floor.
My question is, I mean, we definitely seem to be changing a lot of our attorneys lately, but, you know, why aren't we using the village's firm? I mean, why isn't, you know, Peterson, Johnson, and Murray, you know, getting that business and, you know.
That's a very
I
simple,
mean,
very
do you
simple
guys
answer.
do you have the experience with
Very
doing it? Is that
simple
why
answer,
we're looking
President.
somewhere else?
President, the decision was made when we structured the agreement with Query and Harrow and then with Peterson, Johnson, Murray, that they had a skill set, and we carved out of the legal services, specialized services like TIF finance, and we brought in a separate counsel 2 years ago for that, making a transition. And let me again try to be clear. We're going from that early stage of this development to the development agreement with Hamilton Partners, maximizing our return on that agreement, determining an exit strategy for this village so we can pay off debt based upon the anticipated success of this development. That takes a special skill. I actually was introduced to this firm and to the principal, to be very quite frank with you, during the advocate issue. When we went before the planning board and the hospital was refusing to do a impact study, the planning commission tabled action. We sat and negotiated with the hospital, and we said, you have to undertake an impact study. They said, okay, if we're going to pay for it, we want X firm. We said that firm's unacceptable, and we suggested 2 alternative firms that we had researched. Both of those firms were outstanding, and one of the firms in my discussions actually talked to me about this firm and their strengths in Schaumburg and other work that they had done, Bloomington, Illinois, on TIF work, and some 40 other communities. But primarily looking at some difficult development agreements and exit strategies that they had worked on in Schaumburg and in Bloomington. So that's how they came about. To me, it's a great segue into the next phase of development. We're actually building buildings, filling those buildings with tenants, making sure per the development agreement we're getting our share of the gross rent, which is a special deal we cut. We're sharing, unlike what was done here in the center of the town, we have a very unique agreement. We have a true partnership, very transparent agreement, of which this board approved, and we get a revenue stream as long as those buildings are filled and producing rent from clients like Mariano's. We'll get a share. So the more successful, the more that Oak Lawnians and neighboring communities shop in these stores, we share in a percentage of that gross rent. So I wanted somebody who I felt, at the same time lowering the fees, was hungry and ready to do this, and I think I found that firm, and that's why I recommended it to you. And I'll stand by whatever the board decides on my recommendation.
Okay. Trustee Desmond?
I think the village manager answered most of my questions. One question, the previous firm village used, were they not willing to reduce their fee to match these?
You know, it wasn't an issue of reducing that fee alone, Tim. I can honestly say I did not ask that individual to reduce that fee. But, you know, my discussion with the principal and knowing a very seasoned, highly professional, good company, was that the village was going in a different direction, and I felt this was best for the village, and I shared that with them.
Trustee Straight?
Just, and given this discussion and you know, all this, the looking into it that I think we've all been doing through this process, I did realize that I did not have a copy of the agreement that we have with Peterson, Johnson, and Murray. I would appreciate if I could have a copy of that, and also if I could have a copy of the agreement that we had with Query and Harrow. I didn't have that in my files for some reason.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Trustee Border?
Yeah, just a comment, Mayor. In the memorandum that was given to all of us from Larry, it clearly clarifies why he wanted to make this change. And it says, "I welcome questions and dialogues with individual board members before Tuesday." I made the call, okay, and I was filled in. Could have saved a lot of time at this board meeting if he had made a phone call.
I did.
Any other discussion? Okay, may I have a vote, please, on item 12A.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
No.
Trustee Quinlan?
No.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Carberry?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-2.
Thank you.
Item 12B authorizes the reorganization and restructuring of service deliver system for regional emergency dispatch services. May I have a motion, please, on item 12B?
Motion to approve.
Properly moved by Trustee Desmond. Any second? Okay. Hearing no second, we're going to move on.
I'm sorry.
Motion fails. Pardon? Trustee,
Second.
we have a second by Trustee Carberry. Any discussion?
Yes, Mayor Barry.
Trustee Streit?
Okay, so, and again, this is an item that is the authorizing, this is B, authorizing the reorganization and restructuring of service deliver system for regional emergency dispatching services, correct?
That's
That is
what it
correct.
says.
Okay, now, I know that, that we've seen some information on this over the months, and I'm probably speculating as to what this means, but it does seem that that this would be essentially outsourcing the 911 services. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. And again, there's nothing in my packet that would, that would really, tell me that that's what it means, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. But in thinking about this, and I'm sure that there's been a great deal of thought given to this whole idea of how do we, again, how do we save money? We saw the presentation. I certainly understand that that's at the root of this whole recommendation. But I did want to point this out, that those folks that work for us in the 911 center, they work hard to ensure that when someone calls for an ambulance or a police officer, that the first responders arrive quickly and that they arrive at the correct address. This isn't the case in every community in this country, and you don't have to search very hard to find stories of poor response times and mistakes by dispatchers elsewhere. We can't simply contract away an important service without really examining the issues of reliability of services and the economic effect that we would have on our own community. I would like to know if we have examined the effect of the reorganization of the dispatcher system has on the individual dispatchers and the local economy. For instance, how many of those dispatchers live here in the village of Oak Lawn? How many of them will be unable to replace their income if we choose to contract out these services? When we talk here about laying off people, firing or reorganizing services, we shouldn't forget that we are talking about real people. We are talking about people who are raising families, who are out. Some of them are certainly shopping in Oak Lawn, and who some of them send their children to our schools here as well. With all the foreclosures that we've seen in our community over the last few years, we don't want to make our local economy even worse by putting our own employees in the unemployment line. Despite receiving a lengthy report on the 911 services, I don't ever recall seeing any information about the reliability of service or how it would affect our local economy. It'll save money, okay, I guess, but will it really in the long run? Because that part wasn't analyzed. I've lived in Oak Lawn my entire life, and I can tell you that I take comfort in the fact that when we call 911, we have trained professionals answering our calls and sending the right first responders to the correct address. One mistake can cost someone's life. So it's important that our dispatchers are professionals and are trained properly. Contracting out services sounds like a good idea until you really examine the facts. We have to find another way to make the dispatch service continue providing us the service that we have come to expect with the same professionals that we have serving our community today.
Mayor, if I could.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. First of all, there are many men and women in the audience that are colleagues of mine. And Bob, I don't think you've ever heard me ever up here say anything other than I think that we do an outstanding job for this village. But that is not going to resolve the adult talk that you just heard. These 6 recommendations I have before you, and we're only on the number 2, and each one of them probably will get harder as we go through the discussion, will probably accrue conservatively $1 million in reoccurring savings, not $5 million, $1 million. They're the least painful for the most part because I'm doing what I can when the position is vacant to recommend to you that that position not be filled, and everybody who remains, including me, accepts more responsibility on their shoulders because that's what you do. We're in public service. We're in public service, and we have almost a 0 turnover rate, which, quite frankly, in the real world is highly unusual. That would tell you that you, as trustees, and your predecessors have done a good job of providing wages and benefits to every man and woman who services the city in a fair fashion. But it all needs to be re-examined, looked at, and adjusted. So based on that, a year ago, in March of 2012, you directed your fine director, Kathy Hansen, to go out and seek a professional firm to look at our services, look at our billing practices, look at how we bill our municipal customers, because we are a regional service. We service Bridgeview, Burbank, Evergreen Park, providing police and fire dispatching, fire for Bedford Park, fire for Stickney District, and to Trustee Carberry's point, he's exactly correct, and it's been a point of Trustee Quinlan since your election. We have to make sure that everybody pays their fair share. So that report was finished. It was presented to the board in November, and the board directed me at that point to move forward with talking to the labor union that represents the telecommunicators. We reached out within 24 hours the next day. They were busy. They could not meet for 2 weeks. We met in December. We met in January. The law in Illinois requires us to meet and confer. They filed an unfair labor practice, of which the Illinois Labor Board voted and rejected that unfair labor practice, ruled in favor of the village. They've appealed that. Respectfully, we responded, and I'm fairly confident that the village will prevail, but we're following the laws and requirements of the state. Having said that, we met with our customers, Mayor Heilman, Trustee Quinlan, Brian Hannigan, Kathy Hansen, Dan Omazinski, myself. On a holiday in January, we sat down and met with the mayors of those respective communities, their police chiefs, their fire chiefs. It's not a service issue. We do an outstanding job. I have said that in negotiation sessions. I've said it publicly, and I'll say it again. We have an outstanding system. That's not the issue. We have attempted and attempted. This is a group that was not one of the bargaining groups that gave concessions back in 2009 when we entered into variance agreements with firefighters and with Local 150. They saw fit not to participate in that process. So we have revisited it. We'll continue working with this. The only action tonight that I'm asking you to do is to keep the process moving along, because once again, every day that we continue status quo, we are losing money, we are jeopardizing the jobs of those men and women because our customers will not tolerate that. Our municipal customers will look to other sources. We are in competition. There are other dispatch centers in the surrounding areas that do an outstanding job. I think we do a better job. But the point of the matter is we have certain provisions contractually that we need to have adjusted. We hope that the men and women of that organization who voted 28-2 last week not to accept or not to talk about changes, we hope that they will continue the dialogue. We certainly intend to. But in the meantime, I'm asking your support to continue meeting out to address the very questions that you've asked. We took bids. We had 2 bidders. 2 outstanding firms that are providing services across this nation and doing a very, very fine job today. We will have to sit down and do our due diligence, present them to you, and see whether or not that is a direction you want to go. My preference, which I have said all the time to the men and women at the bargaining table, is work with us. I prefer to keep you. But if I don't have something that I can present to you, I can't address Trustee Quinlan's request to drop the cost, get our other customers to pay their fair share, or what's going to happen is if we have 3 strong customers, just one leaves us and goes to another service, we'll have layoffs. I have before you later number 6, eliminating vacant positions. Doing my best to try to minimize the pain and the consequences of actions that you are right, Trustee Strite. It is something I think about every day, but this is my job. I got to give you options. I got to let you know what the story is. You've heard the presentation from Mr. O'Donnell. We need to do things, and that's why that's before you, Trustee.
Madam Mayor?
Trustee Desmond was first, actually.
This is for Larry again. Larry, what was the offer that, what was rejected?
In our...
Was it a pay raise?
I don't want to get into collective bargaining here, and I'm looking at council. It's okay, I can address this. What we were looking to do with the men and women in our telecommunications was to mitigate or cap rising wage costs, and in return to extend the contract for a couple more years so that they wouldn't think that every year we were going to have to face this issue. So for continued and extended job security, help us with the wages, also help us with some of the work rules so we could reduce the overtime that is building in that department. And those were the core objectives that the village sought. And then another, I thought, quite a creative one, which goes to what Trustee Carberry said as well, and which I've discussed with Chairman Olenichek, is, and actually, there was some concerns on their part, but I'm going to say it public. I mean, I know that Trustee Olenichek and Mayor Burry, within weeks of her election and Trustee Olenichek's re-election, traveled to Springfield, sat down with legislators and said, look it, you've got to change the wireless fee, the fee that appears on customers' bills. It is not catching up with the hard line. And hard line revenue and usage by taxpayers and residents are going down, and the wireless is going up. You need to adjust that. And I propose to the union that if they will join us hand in hand in supporting that change so that we were getting something on the same level revenue-wise as a hard line, that could soften the blow of extended wage freezes. So I thought that was a pretty good partnership. There was a little trepidation. How do we know that you're going to be doing that? Well, I know that you two made that trip down to Springfield in April, and I know that days ago I was speaking on the phone and to legislators, and I know that Mayor Burry had in her office Kelly Burke to go over this. So I know that we're committed to
I
that.
also discussed it with the governor last week.
Okay, so we're trying to do that part of it as well. It's a multi-pronged approach to close this gap. Let me recap if I could. Number one, customers. We want you to pay your fair share. Old, antiquated contracts will not work. So we presented them a master agreement, very similar to what we've done with our water contractors. We took old, outdated agreements and said, this is the way you should be paying for dispatch services. Everybody pays the fair share. Should be no different if I'm a resident in Evergreen Park and I have a 911 emergency, or if I'm in Oak Lawn, Bridgeview, or Burbank. Number two, let's get a better revenue stream, fair share from the users of wireless phones across the state. And number three, work with us contractually in addressing some work rule and some adjustments, and I think that we can adequately get this matter resolved. The alternative, and I know no other alternative, is another service provider, which again is happening across this country. You are not doing anything novel or new if you proceed down this course. It is a reality that we're seeing across this country. More and more municipal services are being contracted out and done so very successfully. And Bob's concerns are all valid. I share them, and the whole board does as well. But we'll do our due diligence if that turns out to be the best option for our residents.
So you weren't asking for a price or wages or benefits reduction? Just asking for just for a pay freeze?
We were looking for a freeze over a period of years, not even a reduction. We started out at a reduction, but that was in January, and when we got some indication that the legislature, the General Assembly, thought there was some inequities and there wasn't fairness, we thought that we could capture some money in that way, and eventually we believe we have a shot at that.
So would a pay... Sorry.
You're not done.
A pay freeze would have, in your opinion, taken care of the issue?
Alone, no. The work rule changes, cooperation, management. We have some non-union managerial supervisory employees. They have to play a role. We've spoken to them. They were willing to chip in to cover certain hours and gaps so that we could reduce the overtime. So you got to reduce overtime. You have to adjust some work rules, freeze those wages, and then seek equitable paying by our customers and at the state level. All that together, yes, we can close this gap. One of those fails, we have a problem. The outsourcing does the trick, but will the service be as good as the men and women that we provide? That's a question. That's a important question. Again, I apologize for being redundant. It is not a service issue. We do an outstanding job every day in this community. I think we're a leader. And that's what the consulting report said. But you can't be a leader and not be able to fund it. You can't go to the taxpayers and ask them in Oak Lawn to pay that burden at the expense of other folks that don't pay the same. It's not right.
Trustee Olejniczak.
Yeah, just to clear up, on everybody's phone bill, when you have a phone bill, whether it's your cell phone or your hard line, there's a 911 surcharge. Everyone gets it. When it was to your address and to the village of to Oak Lawn, that money came directly into Oak Lawn. Now people carry cell phones from Florida all around. It doesn't make a difference what the area code is. People have them from 954-630. Wherever your cell phone area code number is, it doesn't go, they're not advanced enough to go to the home address. It goes from the interchange or the exchange of your area code number on the cell phone. That's what we're working with the state legislator to be able to get a better definitive law that would require that from the cell phone carriers to be able to put that money back into the communities that the 911 is being serviced from. A lot more to it than just that, but that's what we're talking about with that 911 surcharge. If you just look around here, probably less than 50% of the people here have a hard line into their house. Just statistically, people are getting rid of it, and that causes some issues. The other thing that, Larry, you're saying, this is not at this point eliminating anything. This is giving you an option for being able to negotiate, correct?
Absolutely correct.
And the concern comes up from our downstream, our other customers that we currently service, saying that they have other abilities to get the same service at cheaper cost, correct?
They do, and our response was, do you think that our services are quality services? Yes, but we can't afford them. There has to be change in the cost and financing of those services. And we pledged to them on Martin Luther King Day, when we met, that we would go out and we would do that. We gave them a copy of a draft new agreement. All the customers have a new agreement, a new governing, a statement of mutual cooperation, hopefully getting them to buy in if we relinquished a little bit of a control and gave them more say. We've done that. And then the financing, we have a recommendation from our consultant. We gave them a copy of the consultant report. The methodology I've used before in other communities where I've provided regional services. It works very well. It's standard in the industry. We gave that to them as well.
So if these other customers left us, inevitably there would be layoffs no matter what.
Correct. You'd have to.
And
Yes.
so how many telecommunicators, let's just say that worst case scenario happens and people do go or don't want to get on ours, how many telecommunicators does it take for us just to run just the Village of Oak Lawn?
Well, if we were just doing the Village of Oak Lawn, we would have layoffs, obviously. And that number would not, that's the beauty of a regional system is a couple years ago under the leadership of this board, we put about $1.5 million into the dispatch center, which is directly across from this hallway. It's a state-of-the-art, outstanding, but technology changes. Servers every 6 years become obsolete. So you have to keep that technology. So you want to get an economy of scale, get other units of government together, Alex. So even if we reduced and we just did dispatch with our employees here, I don't believe that that's a sustainable model. We would be looking probably to outsource it like other communities are doing on the North Shore. There's been outsourcing.
Let me
efforts
ask you
and
the
changes.
question. How many current telecommunicators do we have?
We have 20.
We have 20 telecommunicators, and how many municipalities do they take care of?
We take care of police and fire for 4 municipalities, ourself and Evergreen Park, Burbank, and Bridgeview, and we do fire only for Bedford Park and fire only for Stickney Fire District north of Midway Airport.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Berry?
I'm sorry, was that trustee Strike?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to follow up, and I know there's a tremendous focus on cutting cost on everything, whether it's the presentation that we got or certainly, this plan with our telecommunicators. And I think some time ago, I don't know if the manager will remember this, but I met with officials from ALSIP and also the Village of Chicago Ridge. I asked them if they would be interested in using our 911 center. Both communities asked me to come back with numbers, say how much would it be for us to use, to use your service. And I worked with the finance director, Brian Hannigan, and Brian gave me numbers. And I went back to both communities and said, here's what we would charge you. And both communities said, you know what, that's good, we like that. So my question is, whatever happened to, that would be increasing the revenue, wouldn't that, what happened with, with both of those communities? And why don't we focus on attracting more customers as opposed to cutting our costs?
Well, at this time, if I could, Mayor, Kathy, could you give a mic to Kathy, our Emergency Services Director? Kathy, you want to talk about, again, what we do to market? And again, I would, as a preface, you cannot market a service that is not competitive price-wise. You can be the best service, but we're talking about municipal customers where they have elected officials like us here that are accountable. And so they're looking to get services delivered quality, but also reducing costs. Kath, Alsop in Chicago Ridge, you want to just comment on that?
Well, I have never, that's the first time I've ever heard that. I have spoken to Alsip, and we quoted them. First of all, it's difficult to quote a price to...
After you speak up a little bit, just for the mic.
It's difficult to quote a price to any municipality right now based on the way the contracts were written. The current contracts that we have with our customers, as Larry said, are very antiquated, and the formula that was used was based off of hiring. They would pay for 4 dispatcher salaries and then a certain percentage of the benefits. If we contracted with another agency that wanted to consolidate and come to us, if we didn't need to hire 4 dispatchers to take them on, then the formula wasn't working. That was what started this, that the contracts were outdated. We needed to reword these so that it would be an easy thing to do and market what we have, because we have wonderful technology up there. And then the formula to be able to quote a price would be very simple. When I spoke to Alsip, I think it was in 2010, spring of 2010, I believe, we told them, you know, we were looking probably whatever price it was. They said they weren't ready to come here. It wasn't even about a price. They had issues and they weren't ready to change their dispatching. We tried 3 other western type suburbs, smaller western suburbs that would have come 3 at a time. They also decided to consolidate between themselves. So you have competition in this marketplace, surrounding dispatch centers that are consolidated centers are, quote, lower prices than we have. So it's very difficult to obtain new customers, individual centers, because our cost is a little bit higher than other consolidated agencies. And as far as the wireless and the hardline money, what people need to understand is within that wireless surcharge that we receive, we receive $1 for hardline for the Village of Oak Lawn for the phones that are plugged into your walls. With those going away because people are using cell phones more, we only receive 58 cents on the dollar for cell phones. So that revenue is completely off now because hardlines are being shut off, cell phones are being used more, we get less revenue for those. And then within wireless cell phones, there are government-issued phones for which we receive 0 revenue, but they all dial 911, and you need a dispatcher on the other end of that phone to pick it up. And the pay-as-you-go phones, the throwaway phones, we receive 1.5% of the retail sale. That's all. But they all are to dial 911, and you need a dispatcher on the other end of that phone to answer it and get you the help you need. So we're faced with revenue depletion and rising costs with technology. We're supposed to be next generation with being able to receive text messages and video to 911. Nobody in this state has an answer in our industry on how we're going to pay for that. So that's, anybody have any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Kath.
Trustee Desmond?
How long before the equipment you have becomes obsolete?
Our current radio system right now, we had a quote from our radio vendor for a new radio system because it's supposed to be, what we have right now, we need to be IP-based radio system. The current radio system that we have, Motorola has stopped making parts. The quote that we got from our radio vendor, we went to our other agencies and they didn't want to pay it. They said it was too much money. They said, let's wait until we really can't get parts, and we'll see what happens. But they couldn't afford to pay to get the new radio system. So we're kind of hoping that we're able to get parts if something breaks.
Thank you. Any other questions, Trustee Warder?
I just have a comment, but I come from a prejudice point of view. I was a policeman here, and I know that there is a unique relationship between that dispatch and that police officer on the street. And I asked you, Larry, to keep that in mind when you make these hard decisions. I understand that it's expensive, but I think if we lose our dispatch center here, we're going to lose a little bit of the services that the police department provides to this community.
If I could, Mayor?
I
I certainly respect particularly Trustee Vorderer, who served as a police officer here in this community. And what he's saying is no different than I think I feel, having run regional dispatch services in other communities. I'm a big supporter. The intent, if we were to go this route, would be to embed that agency right here in our center. We've got the technology. Now there'd be different faces. We would still have management team here, our team leaders, and that entity would be right here with our police and fire. But that is not my preferred option.
All right. Well, then, one more comment. I would ask the unions and the employees and my friends to consider the financial problems that the village has and keep this dispatch center and this operation going. Might need some concessions at this time, but keep that in mind, because I'd hate to have to vote to close it down. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Quinlan.
Couple things. There is a lot of staff that's here, and as Larry mentioned, you know, I was at that meeting in January, and it was an eye-opener because they came out and said, you know, Oaklawn's the best. There's no one better. But the problem is, you know, and in fact, one community had, you know, made some inquiries about going outside of it, you know, using someone besides Oaklawn, and they said it's cheaper. And I was like, you know, wow, not good. So what happens then if they, as Larry said, I mean, that's what was running through my mind. Okay, if they drop out, then all of a sudden, right now, Oaklawn already does pay more, you know, than their fair share for the services that we have here. And I have seen the documentation on it. Trust me, I've been looking at this for years, and I know Kathy has worked super hard on trying to cut expenses so that that's not going to be the case. But there is still some, because of the contracts that are existing, the antiquated contracts, and it's unfortunate. I don't think anybody in Oaklawn wants to look at that, you know, outsourcing, you know, a great service that we provide. But we can't afford to lose anybody that we have right now as one of our customers. I do think that a lot has been brought up tonight. I think that, Larry, you have already been working with the union, so I don't think that, you know, saying yes or no to this authorizing the reorganization really, you know, means anything tonight. I think that this board would probably benefit from having, you know, some of those statistics that are out there. You know, what does it cost Oaklawn residents? You know, how much are all the other communities pitching in? You know, what are some of the pricing if you outsource it? I mean, you can't ask this board to make a call without actually having those facts.
Well, if I could, and again, all good discussion, Mayor. What I'm looking for is the governing body's authorization to pursue this option. I'm hoping, parallel, that we continue the meet and confer and dialogue with our local union. But to answer all of your questions here, this is a fine tax-paying Illinois company that we're talking about that does an outstanding job today, and they are poised They know what the situation is here. They want to demonstrate they can service, and I'd like to be able to pursue that.
Mayor,
Trustee Carberry.
this almost was a no vote, and we've been on it for 45 minutes. Can we call this to a vote?
Okay, let's call the vote.
Okay. Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
No.
Trustee Quinlan?
No.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Carberry?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-2.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on, item 12C on our long agenda. This is a request to approve potential change in healthcare insurance from Blue Cross Blue Shield to United Healthcare. May I have a motion, please, on item 12C?
Motion to approve?
Properly moved by Trustee Oliniechek,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Desmond. And any discussion on this item?
President, if I could,
yes, Larry.
I've had some discussion with all of you since the agenda and your agenda package was received, all very thoughtful questions. So I committed to those who contacted me that what I'm doing tonight is I'm introducing to you a team that represents an alternative provider of health insurance. And under the law in our contracts with our employees, 90% of the workforce in Oak Lawn is represented by a collective bargaining agreement. We have 7 collective bargaining groups that I would continue having meetings with what's called a health insurance committee comprised of representation from our workforce. We've already had one with the alternative provider, United Healthcare. But I would be coming back to you after I've had a meeting with the employees. But we're going to move with dispatch, and here's the reason why. If you make the change by November 1 without changing the benefits substantially, and that's the operative word under the law, the village has the authority to change the provider so long as you don't substantially change the benefits, which we're proposing. In some cases, I think it will be an improvement in the hospital network and in the doctor network that this company provides. If you make the change, you have to notify the Blues 60 days in advance of November 1st. The savings to the village overall would be $419,411 for the same benefits. If you make the change on December 1, it goes to $463,000. But the point of the matter is this is before you because it's $363,000. It's a substantial 6-figure savings. We have provided a list of communities that are currently being serviced by United Care. We provided that to the police command union that requested those communities. I personally have spoken to the human resources director in the following 3 communities, which have a similar profile to Oak Lawn, and they're servicing these communities. Number 1, O'Fallon, Missouri, which is a community north of St. Louis of a middle, higher up income, 80,000 population, 383 full-time employees. We have approximately 340 full-time employees. Wellington, Florida, which is a 57,000 population community in Palm Beach County, directly west of downtown Palm Beach. High growth, strong, well-respected community. They have 300 full-time employees. Both have been served by United Healthcare. They were switched because of cost. The services they feel are fine. And then the third community is Fort Collins. That's a larger community, but a highly respected university community in Colorado of 150,000 and 2,000 employees. There are Illinois communities that have also been provided, Barrington, River Forest, Vernon Hills, as references for any of our employees that wish to speak to them. With us tonight, our insurance broker, who's been with the village and served us quite well since the 2006-2007 change. Pat Sheehan and Lori Sandman are here tonight if you have any questions for our broker. They were the ones, knowing all the cost issues, expenditure issues the village is facing, that they went out and sought competition. Courtney Marsh and also Lori Wilborn are here from United Healthcare. These are the faces of the folks who would be interfacing with village employees, you as Board of Trustees and management. They're here to answer any questions you have, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell you the clock is ticking on this proposal. And when this meeting is over, I intend to assemble another meeting with our employee committee to talk about it, but I wanted you, if you had any questions and to see these folks, feel free to ask them questions when they're here. If you folks want to just stand up for a minute so they can identify you, and then if they want to ask you questions, you just come up to the dais. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call a recess after this point of discussion, so a brief recess.
I'm Patrick Sheehan at Mesereau Financial.
Thank you.
Lori Sandman, Mesereau Financial.
Courtney Marsh, United Healthcare.
And Lori Wilborn, United Healthcare.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Trustee Straight.
I have a question for these folks here, and then maybe a question for the manager. And I guess the first question to you folks is that would our employees see any change in the quality of service that they would receive with this change?
I'll address that. We worked very hard to make sure that everything was as seamless as possible. So what we provided United Healthcare was copies of all the contracts, copies of all the plan documents, and we tried to mirror the benefits as closely as possible. With any transition, there's always things that can't be anticipated. So that's why we assembled a team to work with people individually if they run into a rough patch. As far as customer service, we tried very hard to improve areas that need an improvement. For instance, the majority of the employees right now are insured through an HMO with Blue Cross Blue Shield. That HMO limits the specialists and the physicians that they can see because they choose a primary care physician, and that primary care physician has to refer them to a specialist within their small medical practice. With United Healthcare, the process is a little bit different. You still have to stay in network, but the primary care physician can now refer the patient to anybody within their network, not just limited to their small group. So the employees have greater access to specialists. And also the retirees are going to have access to a national HMO network. Blue Cross's HMO right now is limited just to Illinois providers or doctors or hospitals. And with United Healthcare, it's a national network. So if they're out of state, they have access to care wherever they're located. So I hope that answers that question.
It does, thank you.
Okay.
And
a follow-up for the manager?
Well, a follow-up for the broker, if I could.
Okay.
Is there a set, Pat, is there an industry standard on the broker fee for this type of policy?
You're under 150 lives, and United Healthcare could answer this as well, but when you're under 150 lives, the standard fee, depending on the carrier, what they don't want is brokers coming in under 150 lives. So there's a set fee under 150 lives. That fee with Blue Cross is anywhere, it's usually 3.8% under 150 lives. With United Healthcare, I believe it's 5%. When you're over 150 lives, the fee is negotiable. Our fee is I would say it's much less than usual and customary. Right now we have just over 1% commission built in, which I think, we're privately held. I think if you take our fee and compare it to other fees that municipalities are paying, I would say we're very competitive.
Okay. And thank you. And the follow-up for the manager is, are we seeing any resistance from any of the bargaining units here?
President, I thought that the meeting that we had with the Health Committee, which was represented by patrolmen, the Police Command Union, firefighters, telecommunicators, Local 150 Public Works, there were a lot of excellent questions, a lot of good dialogue. We were here for well over an hour and a half. Computers were set up so that if there was a concern for one of the representatives about whether their doctor was in the network. They went right to the computer, plugged in their doctor, and there was no doctor that was out of the system. But that's not good enough. We need to meet with the employees again. There may be some special cases that we're not aware of because of HIPAA and that. And I would leave it up to the men and women of our various unions to share in dialogue with their workers and then come back to us in a committee structure. So nobody wants change. I understand that. Blue Cross Blue Shield's been here for some time. We had I don't know whether it was Humana at one time, that was not successful. So would it be nice? We negotiated with Blue Cross Blue Shield, we drove the price down, and this, at one point I thought we would get it within 100,000, where maybe we could get the unions to work with us on closing that gap. I'm here to tell you tonight, it's too big of a number right now. The number is the 363 that I mentioned. It's sizable. On the question about the commission fee, I asked each human resources director about the commission fee, independent of their knowledge, and they all answered it about the same. So we got a discount as part of, obviously, competition. They would like the service. They'd like to service Oak Lawn, and so they were aggressive in their pricing.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Trustee Quinlan?
I'm sorry. I guess what I don't understand is, we're looking at a huge contract, and I'm sure we're approached all the time. Why this is something that wouldn't behoove us? I mean, wouldn't we be smarter to have this go out to bid? Instead of just hand it, nothing against Mesro, but, we're accountable, and, there's certainly people here in Oak Lawn that probably work for brokers or work for insurance companies, and, and so that's where I'm still not understanding why a contract like this, we're not putting out to bid.
If I may answer that, as a broker consultant, what we do is we do put it out to bid. So we prepared a bid on the village's behalf and sent it out to all the major insurance carriers in Illinois. And at that point, we get responses back. And United Healthcare was the most competitive offer on the table, and then we renegotiated to get a more competitive price. And typically what happens when you use different brokers, the insurance companies, and they can respond to this, but the rates issued are pretty similar to, with other brokers. So basically they quote not based on who your broker representation is as much as your demographics and your information.
I don't know. I still have an issue with not giving other companies the opportunity to bid on this.
Okay. But we did look at Humana, we looked at Aetna, we looked at.
I'm not saying, someone besides Mesro. I mean, in my opinion, I just think that, again, nothing against Mesro, and you do have some of the village business already, but I do think that it's something that should be looked at as well.
I can say something to that, too, just like the difference between, that you'll find between other brokerage firms. We would never, you're going to get the same rates anywhere you go, because if you went to a different provider other than Mesro.
That I understand, but it's also then with their commission, I know you're saying it's 1%, but would we get a better percentage, from somebody else that would be representing you guys?
Right, and I think that.
Right,
so
because legally, you have to provide the same quote to everybody who's asking you for it.
Right.
That I understand.
Yes, and
And
obviously
the difference then
commission-
is what the commission is from the broker. Am I
Right.
understanding that correctly?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
That's something that can vary, certainly, and I think Larry had mentioned that.
I had talked to Larry about
Okay.
this. Yeah, and my feelings on it. And I, again, it's a big contract, and I do think it's something that should be opened up.
Thank you. I'm going to call the vote.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
I thought we weren't voting on
Trustee Strite?
this.
Trustee Strite?
There's a question.
Pardon me?
There was a question, it was a request to approve the potential change, so,
I thought we weren't taking a vote on it.
There's a motion in a second.
yeah, so, okay, continue to call the vote, please.
Trustee Strite?
Yes.
Trustee Quinlan?
No.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Carberry?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
Thank you.
The time is 10:09. We've been here since 7:30, some of us much earlier. I'm going to just ask for a 5-minute recess. We could stretch our legs and carry on. Okay, so I need a motion, please, to go into recess.
Motion.
Properly moved by trustee Oliniechek.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Desmond. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll be back 10:20 at the very latest, please.